Nice.
Awesome. Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Today we have Matt Davis. I know him through meeting through some other things, but we met and he's been privileged us with his presence today. He is an ex-police officer here in New Zealand, just recently actually left the job of the Blue, and he's now gone into working for our Department of Conservation here. So Matt, as usual, I let those that give us their presence, the chance to just tell us a little bit about themselves. So why don't you go ahead and just let us know who you are and a little bit about your background.
Nice one. Well, first off, thanks for having us on this, Chris. It's good to be on here to chat with you and to see what we can share. So, yeah, as you said, I've just recently left the police. I was in the police both in England and the UK for a total of 17 years altogether. Moved over here 14 years ago and worked in a couple of different towns and in lots of different roles in the police. And the police has pretty much been my life for the past 14 years in New Zealand. And now that's come to an end on a whole new adventure, which is going to be good.
Awesome. That's awesome. Tell us a little bit about some of the roles that you did when you were in the police force, if you don't mind sharing.
No, not at all. So I started off back in England, just on the front line. And we say just on the front line, but that's probably the most important job in the police, certainly the most visible. And then emigrated to New Zealand, where I went on the front line for a while, just PST work, general duties when one to traffic. And then I started my kind of interesting part of my career and ended up in prison inquiries, where I did a lot of investigation work into organised crime within the prison, investigating staff corruption, and even put a prison officer in prison himself, but the wrong side of the bars for him. From that, I went on to train family violence and family violence coordination from that neighbourhood policing. Then, due to circumstances, shifted towns and have spent the last several years back on the front line, PST, but also with a community focus, rural policing focus, and road policing.
Oh, all right. So you've done quite a vast variety of different things, and obviously now you've just recently left. So before we go into anything different, I like to ask everybody who we interview or who we have on the show what their actual definition of burnout is, because everybody has a different thing and everybody sees it in different ways. So what would you classify for you burnout as?
I would say for me, personally, my definition of burnout was getting to the point in life where your cup is absolutely full and it is now spilling over the edges. And that might be full of anything, but where your cup is full and it just can't take anymore.
Okay. So when you say cup is full, because I know different people relate. So cup is full is that not in burnout, or is that actually in burnout?
That's in burnout. Well, no, I wouldn't say the cup is full is burnout. It's when the cup starts spilling over. It's like, you're pouring out a pint glass of beer and then you just leave the tap running. So your beer is going everywhere, spilling everywhere. For me, that's burnout, when your vessel is more than full and it's just going everywhere else.
Yeah. So what's that feel like to you? Like when you're in that state of burnout, what's it feel like?
For me, when I reached the absolute, what do you call it, pinnacle or rock bottom? It's kind of somewhere between the two. For me, that was really a point of, in hindsight, absolute desperation, of being suicidal, of just wanting to find a way to not feel like that through whatever means necessary, whether it was contemplating suicide or drinking more than I should or whatever it was.
Okay, cool. And obviously being, I mean, we're police officers. You've left more recent than I have, but tell me, what do you believe as far as, obviously as the role as a police officer is very demanding on you physically, mentally, emotionally. Do you believe that this had a role in you getting burned out?
it was 100% the sole cause of me getting burnt out. Interestingly, and I'll say this and I'll add this on, is that you don't realise what a stressful job policing is until you leave. Mm-hmm. Even you can work in a quiet environment, and the town I worked in was a quieter rural town. But because you're always waiting for the next thing to happen, you find yourself, in hindsight, in a constant state of stress and preparedness and hypervigilance. And that just takes its toll on you, personally, emotionally, mentally, and physically.
Yeah, no, I totally, yeah, you're constantly in that high alertness. Even, did you find when you were on duty, it was worse than when you were off duty?
Towards the end of my career, to be honest, Chris, it was very much the same, whether on duty or off duty. But certainly sitting in the car, one up, single crew covering a huge rural area, your vigilance goes through the roof, especially on those swing shifts when you're getting called to a domestic or something like that, or you're just waiting to be called. So,
yeah, nah. So let me. Here's an interesting question for you. When we're obviously, because I know there is quite a few first responders that listen to this show. So if you were, say you could go back 10, 15, let's go 15 years, a couple years into the police, you're in the UK and that still, what would you want to teach yourself back then, 15 years ago, so you didn't end up going through the burnout and ending up where you did in the end?
I think the important thing I've learned is not being afraid to go and get help or just seek somebody out to speak to, a professional, be it a psychologist or whatever. Just when you start to feel a little bit twitchy and you can kind of sense something might not be quite right, just going and getting things sorted out a lot earlier and not leaving things until it's too late, really, because there's absolutely no stigma with sitting down and talking with someone to deal with the crap.
Yeah, no, definitely. What about those people that don't what would be something that you would recommend for people to start doing, before to prevent them even getting to that stage where they actually even need to go, where they feel like they're even crossing that line where they're like, oh shit, something's going wrong, something to prevent even that. What would you recommend to yourself?
I'd really recommend, it's interesting to say prevent. The whole thing with police in New Zealand now is prevention first. So, I'd recommend that go into any incidents that just sit in your mind for a while or just leave a bad taste in your mouth. First and sit down and talk about it with your colleagues and debrief and just talk about stuff. That for me is the biggest thing, because once you start talking, whether it's professionally or over a beer or whatever it is, it's dealing with it. And that's one of the most important things to do, just not bottle it up at all.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, it's something that I talk about a lot. Debriefs are one of those very underestimated, very powerful things that you can do. What are some incidents that you went through that you feel were kind of some of the ones that really shifted things for you that maybe you didn't deal with quite in the way that you would now?
Well, I think the biggest one, and it was the cherry on top of the cake, really, was when somebody ran my car a few years ago with the intent to take me out. Their words, not mine. And that left me with a brain injury and diagnosed with severe PTSD. But really, like I said, that was the cherry on top of the cake. It was a whole series of events before that. Critical incidents, a lot of sudden deaths, a lot of domestics that were really quite horrible things to deal with. But it was just a constant treadmill of stuff.
Yeah, no, and I know obviously from my experience, as well as talking to other, police officers on the show and off the show, It does. It kind of slowly creeps up on you, and then all of a sudden, like you said, the cherry on top, it just drops on there, and it's like the last straw, the camel's back. It just all explodes and falls apart.
Yeah, 100%.
What are some of the good jobs that you went to? Because obviously the job is, I mean, I say this all the time, it's the funnest and best job in the world, but it's also the hardest, the most painful job in the world.
Oh, God, yeah. You're absolutely right. Jeez. I mean, there's jobs I'll recount to people to make them laugh, and there's one. It was back in England. I don't know if you're familiar with a character called Benny Hill. He was a British comedian. Yeah, quite a unique looking chap. But anyway, myself and my partner Deb, we got called to a job, and from a woman who's found a drunk man in her lounge, and we go around and we knock on the door, and this woman answers, and this woman is actually a man who's about 5'2", probably weighs a good 120 kilos, and is stood there in a very tight sequined miniskirt with a long blonde wig. And just one of those moments where you think, oh my God, what is going on with this world?
Especially that would have been like, what, 15 years ago?
Yep, very much. And then we go in and we find this man drunk on their couch, and this guy wakes up and is very apologetic and tries to give this other person in the pink dress a hug and a kiss, and we're trying to tell him, no, mate, no, just don't. And yeah, it was all very awkward scene.
Yeah. There's some of those funny stories, those funny jobs, eh?
Certainly are, and there's just too many, and probably far too many of them, far too inappropriate for this. But there's also been some really good serious jobs out there where you've been able to actually make the old cliche come true, is make a difference in somebody's life. There's been times you've saved lives. We've saved suicidal people. We've got women and men away from their abusive partners, and we've seen kids go on from being off the rails to getting on the rails and making a success in their lives. So, like you said, it's the best of jobs and it's the worst of jobs. And when it's good, it's damn good.
Yeah, definitely. So let me ask you this, Matt. Now that you've gone through 17 years of policing, had the ups and downs, and then ultimately, made the decision to leave. What is it that you feel you've learned, and that helps you, that really helps you overcome the burnout in the end, well, through the whole thing, but really, what you use now, even the key things that you find helped you overcome and now help you prevent, getting back into that stage of burnout?
Quite a few things. But the first thing is actually one of the first lessons my tutor taught me back in England, and that was not to take yourself too seriously. It's
cops take themselves way too seriously, I feel.
We really did, and it was just the best piece of advice I wish I'd listened to more and put it on board, because the moment you stop taking yourself so seriously, then you can actually start looking after yourself a damn sight better. And that was the other thing, is just looking after yourself, and really learned this in the past 3 to 4 years, doing those things outside of work which are meaningful to you, which enable you to switch off from work and forget all the crap you're dealing with. And that is whatever you do. Just find that one thing that brings you absolute pleasure and joy outside of work, where you can just switch off. Just self-care, doing that, going to the gym, eating well, and just trying to have a little bit of fun in life, because policing and emergency services jobs, very stressful, very demanding, very demeaning. And you've got to find that key to maintaining a balance in your life with that, and adding some joy back into your life.
Yeah, no, those are some real powerful ones, that not taking yourself too seriously, and not putting so much pressure on yourself is a massive one. You see it so much in policing. Everybody, they want to be the best. They've got to be the best. Yep. They, put pressure on themselves to not screw up and all that. We're humans. Just because you got a badge on your chest doesn't, or a police emblem on your chest doesn't mean that, you're Superman. Yeah,
So,
and then that taking care of yourself. No, that's awesome, man. So what would you recommend to, obviously what rank were you still constable when you left the place?
yeah, did my CPK, so I could have gone on to supervisory stuff, but no, I decided to stay as a constable because that's a good place to be. Shit only flies when you're in that position.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. For any sergeants or, supervisors around the world that are out there, not just in policing, but, policing, I find transferring from policing over into, say, the corporate world can be, it's very similar, but I feel like policing, there's an even higher scrutiny on you than even in the corporate world. You screw up in the corporate world and it's like, whatever. You screw up in the police and it's like the whole world knows about it.
Oh, yes.
So what would you recommend to, supervisors or even, the higher ups, as far as helping our troops these days, our frontline officers, to help prevent them from burning out and then becoming cynical, and then, that dark road that you kind of go down where you end up not really caring? What would be your advice, passing on now, obviously going through it now, on the outside?
Well, our commissioner, my ex-boss, Andrew Costa, his tag phrase for the police now is "be first, then do," and his whole push is to encourage employees to be who they are first, and then do what they need to do. So I would say that supervisors in whichever service role they're in actually need to be themselves around their employees and to be genuine and to be sincere in looking after their subordinates' well-being. And it's really simple. Check in with them. How are you doing? Oh yeah, fine. And then just double checking. Are you? What's going on? Is everything okay? And not making a big deal of it, but just being yourself and being a genuine person, because the troops in whichever service it is will actually respond to that. Once you have a boss who is genuinely looking out for your best interests only, then you're going to be a good performing employee, and you'll be an honest employee and an open employee. So yeah, bosses, be yourselves, be genuine, be honest.
Awesome. I like that. And now, Matt, I'm a huge why guy. I like to know why people do things.
Yep.
That why question all the time. I know we've had a chat about this in the past, and that. What would you say the reason? What would you say your why was for joining law enforcement and staying in it for so long?
The why is really simple, and again, it's a real cliche, which I've mentioned, and it was really simple: to make a difference. And I remember being laughed at by an old sweatback in England. He'd been in the job probably 25, nearly 30 years. And he said, "Why do you want to join the police?" I said, "To make a difference, mate." And he laughed at me. I said, "Well, I don't care if you laugh at me. That's why I want to join." And I've used that as an anchor throughout the 17 years, that whether it's making a difference in only one person's life or 100 people's lives, it doesn't matter. As long as I can and have made or tried my best to make a difference. Yeah, I'm there to earn a wage also at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it was that was the driving force, and continues to be a driving force in my new career in to make a difference.
I love the do the best that you can, because as we've already talked about, you're only human, so you can only do the best that you can in that moment. Question for you, did you ever take that and apply it to yourself and go, hey, actually I need to step back and step away from this in order to be able to make more of a difference?
No, no, not for a really, really long time, because you get so tied up in trying to help other people and doing your best that you never actually apply that principle to yourself. And it's only been in the last few years I've sought to make a difference in my own life to then be able to make a difference in others. So that would be another lesson I would tell my younger self, is make a difference in your life before you try and make a difference in other people's.
What have you seen change since you implemented that?
Well, I'm still here, which is
very good. It's very, very good. We're able to have your presence. I love that.
There you go. That's the biggest one, quite an important one. I've got a whole new life, new invigoration and inspiration for hobbies and experiences. I've got a new career. I've got a new outlook on life. I've come through, battled and won against PTSD. I've helped others along the way on petitioning Parliament to get legislation changed to help emergency service workers. I've got drive, ambition, ability, insight. I've got enthusiasm. I've got joy. Sounds great. Some days it'd be a bit crappy, but get out of bed every morning and think, what are we going to do today?
Awesome. No, I love that. I love the shift that it's made just by going, okay, how can I make a difference in my life to be able to then make a difference in others? Because I know obviously my background is and what I do. Well, what I do now is, obviously helping future police officers. And that's one of the biggest things that I tell them. I was like, look after yourself so you can look after somebody else. Because everybody who joins the police, they can normally start at the I want to help people. And so, that's why you go into, you want to make a difference. But if you can't make a difference in your own life, then how are you going to make a difference in somebody else's life?
Yeah, you're absolutely right there, Chris. It's great to go into the job with those high and very noble ideals. That's why most, if not all, cops join. And you've got to look after yourself to maintain those ideals and not become a cynical, twisted, moaning bastard sat in the corner, which is very easy to do.
Yeah, and sadly, there's a lot of them, and this is why we want to shift it, because they don't need to be out there. They don't need to live like that. There's a greater purpose. You can love what you do. What was the reason that you decided to leave in the end, Matt?
Well, I'd always said that if a better opportunity came along, then I would take it. Coming through everything that I did, I decided if I can make my life better by doing a different job, but while maintaining a good standard of living, then I'd do it. And this opportunity with Department of Conservation came up, and it was too good to turn down. It's better work-life balance. It's still investigating. It's still law enforcement, but it's Monday to Friday, 8 till 4:30, no stress, no drama. So really, it's all that looking after yourself. And I can take all those experiences of the past 17 years and plow them into this job and get a better reward for it.
So if there's listeners out there that say they're wanting, they feel like, oh my God, I hate this job, not even just the police, but just any job. Oh my God, I'm hating this. They're in that real negative, nasty, I say, kind of mindset. Yep. What would be your advice for them to be able to then, to be able to be in a way okay with new opportunities and knowing that they're actually capable of them?
I would say to them, ask them why they're not happy with what they're doing. And this goes back to that why question, really, Chris, is why. And then the what, what is it you want to do? What brings you satisfaction? What brings you joy? What brings you that sense of well-being that you want? And then start looking for it. Start creating an environment where you can achieve that. Be that in the police. And if you can do that in the police, brilliant. If you can't, look elsewhere. I'm a big believer in you have to create your own opportunities, because they don't come looking for you. You've got to go out looking for them. And if you're really not happy in what you're doing, then you should be able to go out and find something else. Granted, at the moment, things aren't easy with just what's happening in the world, but there are always opportunities there if you really want to go looking for them.
Yeah. Do you believe that that police have some of the most transferable skills out there?
I do. There's some of the most transferable, yet also some of the most intangible skills going. We've got some of the best communication skills out there, interpersonal skills, relational skills, organizational skills, dealing with critical incidents, thinking on your feet, thinking outside the box. The skill list can go on and on and on. Yeah, I was kicked out of school, Chris, at 16. I've got no qualifications, and yet I'm now in a job where I was able to list my skills, and it just went on and on and on. So you might not have many skills as a cop, but you have 100 times more than the average Joe Blow on the street.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's the things you learn, you just can't learn anywhere else, and you learn pretty quickly too.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Matt. Obviously, you're ex-police officer. What would be your number one piece of advice for listeners when it comes to that law enforcement side of stuff?
My biggest piece of advice.
Yeah.
I would go back to what I said. I'm going to pass on the wisdom of my first tutor is, one, don't take yourself too seriously in your job. You do a serious job, but don't take yourself too seriously. Number two, self-care.
Yeah.
Look after yourself. A lot of the things that we've discussed. And that'd be it. Really, really easy things. And in the job, keep a check on your mental well-being more than anything else. If you're starting to feel a bit edgy, you're not sleeping as well, some things are mulling over in your mind, go and talk to someone, get it sorted out before it turns into a whole storm of stuff that you can't deal with. Don't be afraid to face up to things that are bothering you. It's because it's normal, absolutely normal.
Yeah, no, I definitely would agree with that. Would you say they'd be the same thing for, people in the what we call in the job the civilian world, or would you say different things?
No, I would say the same things because we've got a lot of people who work in all different areas of the police, and each has their own stresses, each has their own burdens. So it's not just limited to the front line. Communicators, the call handlers, they're the ones listening to the people screaming down the phone. The comms, they're the ones listening to cops maybe getting a hiding and all of that. So it's all the same. It's all the same.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there. As well as, I mean, the self-care is the biggest one. Make sure you have your routine and make sure you have your rituals that you enjoy, the things that you enjoy the most. Like you said earlier on, have that thing that you enjoy. They're all of them are very, very important. No matter what industry you work in or what job you have, or even if you don't have a job, put yourself first so that you can look after others at the highest level. So Matt, final question I kind of like to ask is, what's the one thing you would tell viewers or listeners to help prevent or counter burnout?
But for want of repeating myself here, Chris, the absolute one thing burnout is talking. Because burnout is that accumulation of crap. It's making sure that the cup you're carrying is not spilling, and to offload and to get rid of all that crap that's filling it up. It's just talking and finding that person, whether it's a colleague or a professional, talking stuff through, dealing with it. For me, that's one of the big keys to dealing with burnout.
Yeah. Awesome. I like that. Yeah. Talking is the biggest one. I know listeners will have heard already, but my biggest thing that changed me from being so high alert and not talking, not listening to, not trusting anybody and not wanting to talk to anybody was actually to go talk to everybody. It actually got it all out of my system. So I'm a huge passion for that one as well, man. I love it. I love it. I love it. Love it. Anything else that you'd like to, that you'd like to add today, or anything else, any other, anything that you'd like to ask me even?
Well, I just want to say to anybody out there who's listening to this, who's going to be going through the recruiting process or is looking at the police or any of the other agency services, is go for it. Put all your effort and energy into joining it, because being in those workspaces, you are helping others, is a real privilege. And if you get knocked back, keep going. I had to try twice to get into the police. You'd find it the most rewarding and most satisfying careers, despite all of the hardships that way. So don't give up on your dreams. If that's what you want to do, then go for it. Aim high and challenge yourself. Don't give up.
I love that. I love that. And it really goes for anything, it's not even the police. If you have a dream, go for it. Fight for it, fight for it, fight for it. Elon Musk didn't end up being the richest man in the world because he gave up on his dreams. He had a dream that he wants to, change people's lives, and the way that he's doing it is doing a lot of good. And he just kept fighting, even though he kept getting told no. You look at what's her name, who wrote the Harry Potter books. She got told like almost 100 times or something like that, some crazy amount of times, that her book was shit. And now look at her; she's one of the richest women in the world. But yeah, go for your dreams. I like that. I like that. Cool, Matt. Well, yeah, go ahead, Matt.
No, I was going to say, it's all pretty simple stuff, really. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated.
No, it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. Just go for it. So awesome. Thanks, Matt, very much again for being on the show, for telling us about your experience and telling us all about your experience with the police force and that. I know it can be sometimes difficult to talk about, especially with the restrictions that we sometimes get put on as being law enforcement. But I do appreciate it. I know lots of people have learned a lot from it. I learned a lot as usual. And again, for everybody listening, if you are struggling, if you're having a challenge, or you're having, you feel like you're just not yourself anymore, and you want to be that bigger, better version of yourself, reach out to us. Send us a message. You can send me an email at info@knockingdemonfitness.co.nz, or alternatively, find us on Facebook, Fight the Burnout podcast. But till next time, we will talk to you soon. We love you all. Remember to train your mind just as hard as you train your body. And make sure you hit those like and subscribes and notification buttons down below. Till next time, we love you, and we will talk again soon.